researchers have considered this to be irrefutable proof. Televisa and Mausan Producciones present Tercer Milenio. This is Tercer Milenio, a special program today. We will present physical evidence that demonstrates the reality of extraterrestrials on Earth. A case that has been thoroughly investigated. I suggest that you pay close attention because you will surely discover here the facts that you had wanted to hear, the evidence that you had wanted to know, but that you had not yet had the opportunity to. An extraordinary case. You will truly enjoy this broadcast. And in the next one of Tercer Milenio, we will take you by the hand so that you know the facts as they happened. And surely with this program, the first of its kind possibly in the history of Mexican television, with certainty and possibly in the world, you will become aware of the facts. Let's go then with Guillermo Figueroa, who gives us an introduction to this research.
The story of Ronvel Yusan, an abduction at the age of 9, 3 witnesses, memory lapses, foreign objects that were in his body for more than 40 years without him knowing it, without him feeling them. Test to find out what they are, what they do, where they are, why they are there, and who implanted them. Hypnotic sessions to find out if Ron Noel was really abducted. A surgery where you will be present why to remove these so-called implants. All this in the third millennium. A thorough investigation in search of evidence in partnership with Telemundo's closed case.
It seemed to me that Telemundo, which is a media outlet that wants to convey the truth, could be here, and that is why I am very pleased that they came.
An investigation with the leading scientist in the study of this type of phenomena, abductions and implants, Dr. Roger Leir of the USA. We have come
here to the city of Towns Oaks in Aventura County in Los Angeles, where the clinic is located. From Dr. Roger Leir, who is the leader in removing implants that have been placed after alien abductions in people in the past.
We've seen that the implants have given off frequencies that are used for communication with satellites and aircraft. And there was even one that is a deep space communication frequency that NASA uses.
And I don't know if it's there because I can't feel it. I don't know if it's implanted in the bone or what.
Do you never feel it?
No, I've never felt it.
Let's talk to the specialists who will explain to us why we can say that these small objects of 2, 3, 4 mm are not considered to be from Earth. You will see the tests that are going to be done here. You will see the x-rays, and I think that little by little people will continue to get their attention, as we do in Mexico. And then together we will be able to share this whole experience. We are in Dr. Leir's office. At this moment, he is preparing to carry out some analyses with various devices.
Yes, sir, they're going to do that now and confirm that that thing is still there.
You see an object here which appears to be on the bone or next to the bone. We've got a radio.
But what are these objects? How did they get into Ron's body? Who or why implanted them in your body? Several hypnosis sessions will help to get more answers. The hypnotic session will be key to knowing exactly what happened when Ron was 9 years old and whether or not he was abducted. To complement this investigation, you will witness the surgery that will be performed on Ron to remove this object and investigate it in detail with the most advanced technology in the world.
Finally, the moment is here.
Yes, it's here. I've been waiting long and patiently to have this done, and today's the day you had this.
Object for 40 years.
Almost 40 years.
Are you excited?
Oh, I'm very excited. To say the least, it's gonna...
Be a defining surprise.
I think so. I think we're going to get a multitude of surprises.
Roger Leir is undoubtedly the leading expert in the removal of implants, these small artifacts that have been found in people who have suffered an abduction called abduction. When it comes to extraterrestrial beings, these small objects have been analyzed and have no terrestrial characteristics. Let's find out who Roger Leir is before we dive into the investigation. Here.
Fernando Correa, Dr. Roger Leir has distinguished himself as the world leader in the investigation and removal of implants, artifacts, or tiny instruments that have apparently been placed by USAN extraterrestrial beings in the bodies of some people. We invite you to learn about the work of Dr. Roger Leir. Roger Leir is a native of San Francisco, California, where he lived until 1948. He graduated in podiatric medicine in 1964 from the California College of Podiatric Medicine, devoting himself to the treatment of foot diseases. Roger Leir's interest in the UFO phenomenon began in July 1947 when he heard his father in the kitchen of his home telling his mother that the U.S. Air Force had captured an alien flying disc. He was referring to the Roswell case in New Mexico. Upon learning that there are other intelligent beings in the universe, he began reading UFO literature. His cousin Kenneth Ring would write Project Omega, a book with information about the extraterrestrial phenomenon that surprised Roger Leir, who learned more about the so-called unidentified flying objects. When Leir finished reading his cousin's book, Kenneth called him on the phone and asked if he would write more about UFOs. Kenneth replied that he would not do so due to lack of time and asked Roger to continue the investigations himself. This was how he began a series of studies that represented authentic academic and scientific challenges, research that would later make him the leading expert in the study and extraction of implants. Dr. Roger Leir performed his first surgery in August 1995. The first patient was Patricia Dumley, who had 2 objects in her left foot. The second case was a man named Pat, who had an object on the back of his left hand. As of 2010, Leir has removed 17 implants in 16 people. The implants have been analyzed in prestigious laboratories such as Los Alamos National Labs, New Mexico Tech, Seal Laboratories, Southwest Laboratories, and the Universities of Toronto, California, and York. The results have baffled scientists as the implants are compared. With some meteorite samples, some implants have metallurgical anomalies such as highly magnetic iron that is not found in crystalline form, as well as combinations of metals that do not exist in this world. Foreign bodies embedded in human tissue usually cause chronic inflammation, fibrosis, and cyst formation, something that did not occur in any of the 16 cases Leir investigated. His studies include the publication of books such as A UFO Crashed in Brazil, Alien Implants, Let's Talk About Implants, and recently Aliens and the Scalpel, a publication in which Roger Leir expresses that it is the personal story behind the greatest obstacle of all time to obtain scientific proof that anomalous bioelectromagnetic implants of extraterrestrial origin have been extracted from people who report abduction experiences.
For years, Dr. Roger Lear was in contact with the subject, the patient, the man who suffered the kidnapping, who had the implant in his body. Ron Oyle discovered the presence of this object thanks to X-rays. There was no doubt. However, upon arriving in Thousand Oaks, we had the first surprise. Using ultraviolet light, strange marks were discovered on Yusan de Ron Oyle's body. Even he was unaware of it. It was an extraordinary surprise for all of us. In the next 2 Third Millennium broadcasts, we will present you this fascinating story. We have come a long way, and you will surely enjoy it. He is Rono himself. A story to which Tercer Milenio will dedicate 2 complete programs to learn in depth what happened when she was 9 years old and how after 40 she found out that she had had implants placed in her body.
I don't recall up to a certain point what happened. I have time missing probably 2 or 3 hours or so, and he does have this particular memory. He and his 2 friends are undergoing something where they quotacraft, and they had missing time.
When they were just 9 years old, they had a nighttime encounter where they saw lights, lost their memory, and over the years they would find out that they have implants inside their body.
Well, I had to have carpal tunnel surgery done on my wrist, and when I was getting the x-rays done, the technician had asked me, "Mr. Noel, do you have any metal or foreign objects in your body, such as screws or pins and stuff like that?" And I told her no. And the irony of the day was that I had seen Dr. Lear on TV that night on the History of the Discovery Channel or something like that.
Well, Ron's an interesting case.
There we spoke with Roger Lear, the world's leading expert on implant removal. So far, it has been able to do so on 15 occasions to 15 countries. Strange objects are extracted from the bodies of these people, and when analyzed, they show that they were not built on Earth, that they have magnetic capabilities, and also the ability to transmit into deep space. Let's start with Mr. Ron Noel. Right now, they are doing an analysis on his arms with a special light, and look what happened.
This is an ultraviolet lamp with 3 different wavelengths, 365, 302, and 250, 4 nanometers. And this is the 302 nanometer wavelength, and it's showing up what looks like a symbol of some kind on Ron's arm. And this did not show up at all in normal white light. It's fluorescing under the ultraviolet.
Have you ever seen this, Ron?
Oh, I've never seen anything like this before in my life. It looks like I've been branded. You want to see, doesn't it? Look like a brand. But yet when you turn the regular light on you, you never can't see it.
And it's very similar to other stains I've seen on other ebooks and people who have had a lot of alien.
Contact us, and I shined it on my arm today. And I have like a brand right here on my arm and a little C on this part of my arm. He said it looks almost like a fingerprint, like it was a thumbprint or something right there where they guided me or pulled me. They say it looks like a symbol that is recognizable to other abductees.
Yeah, I've been doing a project to check abductees' houses, and I found 3 different kinds of stains that are both on carpet and walls. And also on people's skin, there's a yellow-green stain. That is what looks like the same stuff that Ron has on his arm. It looks like they marked a symbol on him to probably try to communicate with us somehow or tell us that he's been recently abducted. And this is recent? Yeah, it's within the last 2 weeks for sure.
And do you remember to be abducted in the last 2 weeks?
No, sir. No, not at all. No.
it seems to be the ones that have implants are constantly undergoing abductions. Now, in the 16 cases, including the one I'm about to do,
the marks that were detected with ultraviolet light on the right arm also appeared on the left arm, very close to where the implant was placed. So we will follow this story, the hypnotic regressions, the scientific analysis. We will go all the way with them to really know if they are extracted, what they are. With the implant still placed inside Ron Oil's left arm at his wrist with special devices, electromagnetic energy was found. This object was found to transmit at frequencies possibly into deep space, to have no radiation, to be metallic, and to be completely surrounded by nerves integrated into the body. Incredible. See the research. Ultraviolet light tests showed strange marks on Ron's right arm and left wrist, which scientists such as Dr. Stephen Colbert say are common among people who claim to have had some kind of contact with extraterrestrial beings. But before any decision was made to extract them, it was necessary to know more about them. The first test was carried out with a Geiger counter, a device that can measure whether or not radiation exists.
And this is just normal background radiation. Those is high intense particles that are coming through our atmosphere. Now we'll bring this close to Ron's wrist and see if anything changes. No. So I don't believe there's anything radioactive here at all. So we can all take off our protective gear. Now Ron is safe. He's not emitting any radiation. Two-legged friend.
Once the Geiger counter test was passed, and it was ruled out that this object on Ron's wrist was emitting radiation, another test was performed with this scanner to find out if the structure of the implant is metallic. This was demonstrated to Tercer Milenio by Dr. Roger Leir.
And you look and you see what happens with the arrows when we get very close to the watch. A light lights up and the arrow is complete. So that's metal detecting. There it is. There it is right there. So we put it on a little deeper scan mode. The one I had it on before was superficial. And if you can see the light lighting up, it's pointing right to the object. It's right there. And you see as I move it around, the symbol begins to change. So that's it. We're right on. So if we make an opening right there, it'll just fly out and hit us in the eye.
It does not emit radiation and is metallic. These were the first conclusions that Dr. Roger Leir reached when he carried out the first studies on Ron Noel's left wrist. We are in Dr. Leir's office. At this moment, he is preparing to carry out some analyses with various devices to try to find out if these or this object emit some type of frequency.
Field and see if anything is emanating from Ron's wrist.
Yeah, at this angle, it's about 5.5 milligrams.
Is that high, Steve?
Yeah, that's pretty high. That's definitely significant. Most things do not give off magnetic field. If you could get the camera on here, we could actually read the gauge.
What do you think?
Well, it was turned off for a while and now it's back on.
It is evident that Mr. Claus has an object inside his body. Transmits frequencies, metallic presence can be detected. That is, we will observe it very soon because it will be extracted from its body. We continue here from Dr. Roger Lehr's clinic in Ventura, California with this investigation. All these studies were necessary to be able to perform the operation, extract the implant, and study it in detail. But all this later, here in Tercer Milenio. Accidentally, Rono discovered this object when he was having some medical test done. He didn't know he had it. He had never felt it. It had never caused infection. However, on the X-ray plates, it is clearly seen that the object is there. How could this have happened? See the research. Dr. Roger Lehr was able to verify in front of the Third Millennium cameras that the object that Ron Noel has on his left wrist. It does not emit radiation, it has a metallic structure, and it also has a highly unusual magnetism. Now it's time to find out where exactly it is.
I've been waiting so long for this day to happen. I want to see what time it is.
You find some type of foreign object in the hand that isn't or shouldn't belong. There is interesting.
And he's never had any kind of an X-ray taken before or not. So when we look at this particular view, we see an object here which appears to be on the bone or next to the bone. But we don't know whether that could be what's called an artifact, something that's not real or a little irregularity in the cassette or in the film itself. So we need to take this over again. If it shows up again in the next view, then definitely foreign object here.
You're going to make another set of the...
Yes, we're going to take this view over again to make sure that this is either going to be gone or it's going to be there. If it's repeatable, then it's an object. If it's not repeatable, then it's what we call an artifact, not real.
More X-rays were taken of Ron's left wrist, or Dr. Roger Lehr had to be sure. The result confirmed the hypothesis.
Foreign body in the left wrist of Ron Noel.
It's in the bone.
Superficial to the bone, but there's not much soft tissue here, so it's probably in the soft tissue very close to the bone.
And this is the same.
This is the same. This is a different view, so things are turned into a little bit. So it appears to be in a different area. This is looking like straight up and down on the two bones. And this is what the wrist turns slightly.
The object is there. And with the information obtained by Dr. Lehr, it is an object that will soon be extracted from Ron Oil's body for study. It is strange that these objects had been in Ron Oil's body for 40 years without him knowing. How come they never developed an infection or were rejected by their bodies?
The body rejects it, and you usually get an inflammatory reaction. And in these cases where we're talking about implants of a different nature, there is absolutely no inflammatory reaction whatsoever, no rejection reaction. We know that unbelievably there is a metallic inorganic organic phase which turns metal into biological tissue. So we find that the biological tissue is actually growing from the metal.
That's why there are no infections.
There's no infection, there is no inflammation, and there's no rejection.
Are you really amazed about this? Are you intrigued? What are your feelings now?
Well, my feelings have totally changed since I started this, because I started this as a consummate skeptic. And I set out to prove that this was just a bunch of utter nonsense. But after seeing this 15, now 16 times, I'm convinced beyond the shadow of all doubt that these are purposeful electronic nanotechnological objects that are placed in the human body for a specific purpose.
But what purpose does Dr. Roger Leir refer to with this scientific hypothesis? For what specific reason? Stay tuned to Third Millennium to find out. These millimeter-sized implants can apparently transmit radio frequencies that reach deep space. This was demonstrated there in situ with special equipment. My surprise really grew. You are facing something USAND, a technology unknown on Earth. After various studies carried out by the world leader in implant removal, Dr. Roger Leir, he concluded that the object on the left wrist could be removed without risk to Ron, that its structure is metallic and that it has an extremely unusual magnetism. But Dr. Roger Leir and Third Millennium were even more surprised because these objects, more than 40 years after being in Ron Oil's body, did not generate any infection, rejection, or inflammation. Dr. Leir's hypothesis is that these nanotechnological objects have a specific purpose. But what is it? To find out, a further test was carried out to measure whether these objects emitted any kind of signal. So that, for whom? For what reason?
137.7292, 6 megahertz right on the button. Can you see that? All right, now we're going to switch it over to the gigahertz range. Different frequency, it's 516. 516, 800, 12 gigahertz, and it's right on the button, just locks right on.
But what do these measurements mean? Are they some kind of USAND type of signal? If so, for whom or with what objective? And this means that this is transmitting information to someone here?
That's correct. It's transmitting information to somebody, maybe somebody quite local and somebody that's very far away.
In the past, we've seen that the implants have given off frequencies that are used for communication with satellites and aircraft. And there was even one that is a deep space communication frequency that NASA uses.
This is proof.
Yes, perhaps the aliens are sharing information with our government that these implants provide.
That is to say, just as humans put these implants in animals, even in insects, to know what their habits are, where they go, other intelligences evidently do the same with us.
So somebody's studying Ron Noel. What do you feel about that?
Well, as I said earlier, I feel violated, you know. It's like my privacy has been invaded. They've been probing me, and against my will, perhaps they've been guiding me in these ways. Who knows this thing's giving off electricity or electronic frequencies? If they're going out, why can't they come back in? Steer me this way, steer me that way.
But it's some intelligence from somewhere else is learning, or they're studying something about the human body, and they're gaining that knowledge. And I've come to think that perhaps it is a result of some experiment that's going on.
It is therefore essential to know what exactly happened to Rono and his two little friends when they were 9 years old, when they sighted a spaceship and then lost their memory for almost 3 hours. Ron didn't remember anything that had happened, but he wanted to know exactly what happened so he could understand what was inside his body, why it was implanted, and for what purpose.
Bit in that what he told me just seems familiar, but I can't make it concrete in my head. I want to absolutely positively know, and I've asked Roger to have a hypnotist that makes regress memories come in, and apparently he's gotten one of the best in the country or even the world, so that we can find out what happened. I want closure to this. I want to know what happened to this Daheim. You know what they did to me, you know?
To do this, continue in the 3rd minute. Next up, the hypnotic session with Ron Noel. Follow us. One of the most fascinating aspects of the research was taking Ron Howell through a hypnotic regression to the very moment of the encounter, something he could not consciously remember, but was able to do so under hypnosis. It is truly extraordinary how this statement is made and how it happens live in front of the cameras. You see. After the tests were carried out on the strange objects implanted in Ron Noel's arm, the next step was to find out how they got into his body. To do this, Dr. Roger Leir contacted Dr. Yvonne Smith so that through a scientific protocol, she could take Ron Noel back to his childhood and find out exactly what happened the day he had a sighting and lost his memory.
I have one of the finest hypnotherapists in the world, Yvonne Smith, who was trained under Bud Hopkins, who was still considered the world's authority in hypnosis in this field. And she will perform the hypnosis, and we will hear what they have to say.
Jamie, I have been a certified hypnotherapist and doing work with UFO abduction cases for the last 19 years.
I am going to be hypnotized and try and find these lost memories, regressed memories, and find out hopefully what happened to get the implant and perhaps what these marks are on my arm here recently.
How important and effective is this technique?
It is extremely important when people like my clients who have undergone a very strange experience and parts of it they can't remember. It's like any trauma. Jamie, if someone has a car accident, they're raped. There's certain parts of that experience that the subconscious will block out, and that's only to protect us and get it done.
Let Rono remember what happened that day, that night camping with his 2 friends, where after lighting a campfire and seeing a light in the sky, he completely lost his memory.
In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, as you allow yourself to drift down deeper and deeper into a deep, deep sleep. Finding that each and every time I suggest deep sleep to you, you go quickly, soundly, and deeply to this depth or deeper. And the physical body relaxes and the mind remain calm just very, very clearly.
Go for that day about girls' school. What are we going to do for the rest of the weekend? We have to go get some more firewood. Didn't get enough earlier. I have to go to my house and get some gas. And I poured on the fire and I wasn't good. The fire chases the gas up the stream.
Okay.
I have to let the can go. It catches on fire and we back away, see something in the sky. I don't see it.
And what are you seeing? And what is Donnie and Mark doing?
They're staring, we can't believe. We don't know what it is. We're not afraid. The light just shines on us.
What does the light look like?
Surprise.
Does it shine on you in voice too?
Can't, it's so bright.
Just take a deep breath on your doing. Fine. Just go ahead and describe. Just go ahead and describe for me what's happening.
Floating. I don't want to be here right now.
Okay, just remember. Just remember I would touch your forehead. Take a deep breath. Just remember.
You're safe now.
You're safe now.
What happened next? Would Ron Owell be able to remember that light? And where did they take him and his friends? Can Dr. Yvonne Smith find out exactly what happened? Was that the day Ron Owell was implanted? Stay tuned to Third Millennium to find out. One of the most extraordinary aspects for this researcher was realizing how Ron Owell, under hypnosis, he could understand why his memory had been erased. How it was for his own protection. It is truly extraordinary. Join us. After that light in the sky, Ron Owell woke up from hypnosis. Dr. Smith continued with her scientific protocol so that Ron Owell could recall his memories of that day, of that strange ship in the sky, and the intense light that prevented him from seeing, but at the same time lifted him into the air off the ground.
By floating.
Can you see Donnie and Mark?
They're beside me,
Huh?
bringing us up.
Do you feel scared?
No. Not at peace. The ground's going further and further away.
Okay.
I don't know where they're taking us. Might pulls us into a room, but we can't see.
Can you describe the room?
Can't see. It's like flashbulb lights in your eyes.
Good to get a sense of emphasis in the room.
Big. Really, really big. Clean.
And how does your body feel? Does it feel cold? Does it feel warm?
No, I feel comfortable. Warm, comfortable.
Do you feel someone pulling you?
Forks.
Can you get a sense of what?
That feels cold.
Huh?
The tongue is cold.
Wet. Clammy. I still can't see them. I see a silhouette.
Are anyone touching any part of your body?
Forks.
What part?
My arms.
Both of them?
Forks. My legs.
And what part of your arms?
My wrists.
Can you just tell me the sensation? How does that feel wet, Clammy?
Don't like it. It feels dead.
On both arms?
Forks. I don't like the feeling. I can't do what I want. I'm being held against my will, and I don't like it.
Are any of those people talking to you?
I can't. They don't have mouths. But they tell me things.
What do they tell you?
Two-legged friend.
Don't be afraid, child. We're not here to hurt you. But they don't speak. I hear it in my head.
And 11 again, getting a sense of your arms. Okay, tell me what's happening.
Just describe what's happening.
Something in my arm. I don't like it.
In which arm?
My left arm. I don't know what they're doing. Something's in my arm. I know it is. I can tell, and they have my arm, but I can't move. Why can't I move? They push something into my skin, but it doesn't hurt. There's no blood. What is it? I don't know. I don't know what it is. It doesn't hurt, but I know it's there. They put this in my arm. What did I do? They won't answer.
They don't answer you.
No answers. No answers. They tell me not to worry, children.
Thanks to the hypnotic sessions of Dr. Yvonne Smith, Ronwell remembered in detail that day and how a strange body was implanted in his left arm. But this third millennium research is not over yet. What happened after the implant? How did Ronwell return home, and in what condition? Was there any government investigation into this incident? Yusan, also the long-awaited surgery by Ron Oil to remove the implant from his body, and the exhaustive investigation of the object once it is removed by Dr. Roger Leir and his team. All this in the following Third Millennium program. Before continuing with the presentation of Ron Noel's case, I want to show you here an in-depth analysis that we do on the value of regressive hypnosis. When the present memory does not remember, when there are obstacles that allow us to know what happened to ourselves many years ago and we cannot remember it, then hypnosis allows us to reach those points that are forever recorded in our memory. This is Johanan Diaz.
Hypnosis is a mental state and at the same time a physical state. Mentally speaking, it is a state of relaxation where the mind cancels out, let's say, rational consciousness and allows the person to mentally relax. And this helps the person to be able to enter into their interior and have access to certain memories that they would not be able to easily remember on a regular basis or in a waking state.
This is how psychologist Julian Garcia Granados defines clinical hypnosis, which serves, among many other things, to access memories that we cannot access in the waking state or beta state.
We could achieve this by questioning it. Regarding the mechanism by which humans can remember in detail events in their lives that happened decades ago, he told us that it can only happen in the alpha state since it is easier. When we are in this tune, we cancel this one out.
Brain electrical activity, and then we pay attention inside ourselves and enter, so to speak, our hard drive. On our hard drive, we open files and can access memories that we had from our early childhood or even when we lived in the intrauterine state.
This is because our mind is busy with various activities, but we need to change its frequency to enter a deeper state and have access to those files stored in the unconscious. Hypnosis, he told us, can work at any age.
We put the person, so to speak, without hypnosis. A person is 50 years old and we ask him to gradually remember certain events when he was 40, 30, 20, 10, etc. The same thing happens with a child. A 10-year-old child is asked to remember certain events when he was 5 years old, when he was 2, etc. And he remembers them easily.
There are patients who report that they were taken against their will by extraterrestrial beings to take them to a specific place, usually to an alien ship.
I dreamed of strange beings and I dreamed of birds, and the typical experience where they see this famous light that takes them away, and because of which they ascend towards a ship. And well, the other elements are this famous exploration table where they are doing certain experiments or manipulations with their body.
Finally, Garcia mentioned that he is aware, at least in the Federal District, of 50 cases of people who say they were abducted by aliens, and that 14 of them even speak of having implants placed in their bodies.
Indeed, when people are remembering hypnosis, they talk about certain implants, certain objects that are left in their skin. They even talk about certain implants in their nostrils, in their ears, or in their head.
That's what the Third Millennium cameras talk about. They were there. In fact, we were all there. We watched as Rono gradually discovered what had happened to him 40 years ago, and it was surprising to realize how he himself understood why they took away his memory, because he couldn't remember. You see, thanks to the scientific protocols of Dr. Smith, it was learned that that night at camp, Ron Noel and his two friends saw an object in the sky, then a light that lifted them up after being in a room where, according to what Ron Noel recounted in hypnosis, he was implanted with an object. 9 years old.
They put this in my arm. What did I do? They won't answer.
They don't answer you, no answers.
No answers. They tell me not to worry, child. You won't remember. They told us that we wouldn't remember. We were too young to remember.
And what happened the next day? Was there any investigation by the U.S. government? Why did he snore? Did he and his friends forget the fact? Or rather, why were they forced to forget it?
All we hear of the helicopter. There's never been a helicopter out there before. They're an army.
What did they look like?
They had helmets. They were wearing black jumpsuits and army boots. They have equipment, but we don't know what it is. We don't know why they're here. But I know now. They came to see what we got into. But they didn't know it was us. They'd have taken us away too.
They didn't ask you any questions.
We didn't know. They told us we wouldn't remember. So they did things that we couldn't see. That's what they did. Because we were small kids, see? They didn't know that we were Zweitausend floating. That's in the light. This makes sense, but no pain, no blood, something in my arm, and I forget about it forever. They would have taken us away. That's why they told us we wouldn't remember.
That's why the people in the helicopter would have taken you away.
They would have taken us away. If they wouldn't have made us not remember, that's why they told us we wouldn't remember. Might know that by now. That's why we were too young. We'd talk.
That's interesting, too. Jamie, when it was like he came to this realization, oh my God, now I know I was a little boy and I didn't understand, but now I know why Zweitausend, they didn't want us to remember. He said, I really feel that if we as little boys had told these military men we saw a spaceship and we were taken up and we saw these funny sociopaths.
That's the reason why Rono, he lost 3 hours of his memories. Or he was forced to forget them, according to his own conclusions. But what does this case mean for Dr. Yvonne Smith? Is what Ron Noel said during hypnosis credible?
I know that these things happen. I know that my hundreds of cases over the 19 years I've been doing this, that these people aren't making these stories up.
For Ron, it was a relief. It was about knowing exactly what happened that night and how the object got to his left wrist. An answer that he has sought in the last years of his life. For Tercer Milenio, this story still continues. There is still evidence to be found, an analysis of Ron Noel's surgery to remove the strange object implanted when he was 9 years old. Stay with us and witness when this object will be extracted from Ron Noel's body. What will we find? We then arrived at the Los Robles Surgical Center in Thousand Oaks, very close to the city of Los Angeles. There we found a first-class clinic, 2000. It was the place where he was going to remove the implant. It seems easy. It is not. It requires a complete team of specialists and, above all, very sophisticated surgical equipment. You see, ever since the third millennium met Ron Noel, we had a huge number of questions. Why did he have a strange object in his body? How was it possible that it had been around for over 40 years without Ron knowing? What technology are we talking about? Since in all this time, it never generated any rejection or infection. The time to answer these questions is about to come. The moment of having the implant physically to study it is very close. With the approval of Ron Noel and their need for an answer, the next step was taken. The path to a new reality. The world, why he wants this out?
That's a very good question. Why does any abductee want it out? I think in gathering from what Ron has to say and talk to him, I think like other abductees, he feels violated. Someone did something to him without his permission.
These devices appear to be connected to the nervous system for the most part, and it's a pretty good bet that they could influence the subject in various ways. Maybe through some sort of mind control.
This thing's been in me since I was 9. Who knows? Maybe longer. Maybe they just came down to check on me. It's got a long battery life because that's 40 years ago.
I have reason to believe that many abductees are monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they know exactly what they're up to at any given time. So I think it's safe to say that the intelligence that put the device in Ron's wrist knows exactly what we're going.
The day has arrived. The wait for Ron Noel was about to end. The evidence was yet to be known. Surgery to remove the implant to be performed. The uncertainty would soon come to an end. After remaining in Ron Noel's body for 40 years without being rejected or creating an infection, it would finally be extracted to be analyzed in detail.
Recording device such as a video camera or a still camera, we can take pictures as we can.
In a few minutes at this clinic here in Thousand Oaks, California, the strange implant found in Mr. Ron Noel's body will be removed. This implant will then be analyzed under a microscope, and we will know much more about it. That is to say, this is the scientific investigation that is being carried out on this case and that proves its authenticity. We are faced with technology that is not from Earth, technology that we should know more deeply, even for our own benefit. A true mystery that is about to be discovered. Ron Noel's fate was now in the hands of Dr. Roger Lear's team because you will be present every step of Ron Noel's surgery. Success without a doubt unprecedented. Well, we are here at the Los Robles Clinic. From this place outside the operating room, we will follow the incidents that will be recorded in the extraction of the implant and details later. Now, let's see the moment we were waiting for. how this implant is removed from Ron's left wrist. However, this object was evasive. It seemed to try to evade the tweezers that sought to extract it, as if it were an intelligent object. They said the intervention would last from 1 to 2 minutes. More than 30 days passed and they couldn't extract it. The day for Ron has arrived. Yusen entered the clinic to meet the medical team that would remove the implant from his left wrist. They put on special clothing for the surgery. The nurse began the procedure. Dr. Roger Lear approached Ron to work out the final details. Surgeon John Matriciano, an expert on the subject and with experience of 15 similar extractions, was getting ready, and minutes before the surgery, the final tests were carried out. This is an ultrasound machine that it is now going to be used to try to detect the object as babies are detected, but it does not find it. All this equipment has been put in place, and we who have arrived here will certainly not be able to be inside the operating room, but we will be able to follow the incidents from this place. Of course, this signal will also be recorded and presented on the television program. The studies confirmed Dr. Roger Lear's hypotheses. The professionalism of the medical team of the world leader in implant removal could not leave anything to chance. I have never seen an operation directly with high-tech equipment before. Everything is being recorded, and we are witnesses firsthand of what should be considered a historic event. Technology is being extracted that could be of non-terrestrial origin. It is not easy despite being something relatively simple, one could say, surgically speaking, to find something so small, because it really requires great medical knowledge, great experience. There are not many specialists in mammary glands who work with Dr. Lee. He has had it because he has already been able to extract 15 of these implants, and we hope that this experience will now allow him to extract this one that is so important to us because we have done everything. An investigation, and it's a fantastic case, You are a witness. The extraction of an object that may be from another planet, implanted more than 40 years ago. And I already had it. He already had it and lost it. There we can see directly where the surgeon is looking. It's not that I'm guessing, but you are watching a monitor, this monitor, where Tercer Milenio followed step by step the extraction, the surgical procedure. There you have it now, and I hope that with this attempt you can get it out so that we can immediately see it under the microscope. I think it's there, right? The minutes pass, the uncertainty grows, the agony is prolonged, the object is there, but something is making it difficult to extract. But I think we have enough equipment, enough experience, and we hope that with a few more seconds, this will be out, and we can look at it under a microscope to find out what this strange object is that has most likely been inside the body for 40 years. There is no turning back, but what is making it so difficult to remove the implant from Ron Oil's left wrist? It hasn't been easy at all. A wound measuring several centimeters can now be seen. He won't be able to get it out. Will this research be in vain if the implant cannot be removed? Why or what is making its extraction so complicated? Continue reading on Tercer Milenio to find out whether or not Dr. Roger Lear and Dr. John Matriciano managed to extract it from Ronwell's wrist. After being removed, the implant was immediately taken to a high-powered microscope brought in from another location for careful observation. Nerve tissue was discovered around the implant. How is it possible? How can something like this happen? And above all, that this object has not caused an infection for 40 years. See the images. You witnessed all the preparations for Ron Oil's implant removal and were with him during the procedure to remove it. A surgery that for some reason went beyond the estimated time. Something unusual was complicating its extraction. "40 years, right? In one piece, so it is covered with USAN fabric. Well, a liquid will be placed, and later it can be observed under the microscope. This is precisely the idea. Since it is said that this object changes after leaving, then it is very important now to observe its characteristics to end up being a change after some time, but it is already outside. A historical fact, all the complications at the time of surgery. Dr. Royal Lear's experienced team, with more than 15 cases like this, finally managed to remove the implant from Ron Noel's wrist. Dr. John Matriciano. Once the implant was removed, it had to be analyzed under a very powerful microscope brought from another city in the United States. To know what this object was, study it physically. Another historic fact, because the implant had to be observed under the microscope as soon as possible, because on other occasions these technologies become transformed, hence the urgency of taking it to this powerful microscope.
We're using a very powerful type of microscope, and we're looking at ultra-close pictures of the surface of this object, and it appears on the computer screen, and we're looking at various parts of the surface of the implant.
What did you expect to find?
Well, if we expect to find something similar to what we've seen with the other ones, and that includes metals containing meteoric iron and other minor elements, we expect to. In the past, we've seen structures within the metal. Lately, we've had some other findings which indicate that the biological tissue has a relationship to the metal itself, in other words.
So what technology are we talking about? How advanced is it compared to what is known worldwide? Is it terrestrial? Or what is its origin? It could be a transmitter from which we would have a lot to learn and apply.
Great advantages. Instead of taking years for a signal to go to the nearest star, you might be able to communicate in a few minutes or even in real time.
So whatever this is, it houses a very complex, highly advanced nanotechnological electronics.
Studies of this implant will continue. These are the last images without the biological tissue. The investigation will still provide more answers. Stay tuned for more information on these technologies. Below is the opinion of experts, world leaders in these topics, with 16 extractions of technology similar to this one. What is the importance of the Roe Noel case in a world that demands physical evidence, evidence that can be investigated? It is a real contribution that has been made here. An object extracted from inside a human body that has electromagnetic energy, even though it does not have a battery, that transmits into deep space a body that has been there for 40 years and did not cause infection. Let us then listen to the conclusions, most especially from Whitley Strieber, a very intelligent man, a writer, who makes some very precise observations. But what does this mean? Will this type of technology be terrestrial? For Dr. Roger Leir, it is an astonishing technology that has never been seen before.
And when we reached in to get it, it was gone. It disappeared. We still don't know what happened, so you never know. And that same object, when we placed it in the container of the blood serum where we kept it, it was there for 48 hours. And I took it out to take a look and see what was going on. And we see that the little pieces have changed color, became dark, and started to reassemble themselves in the same morphology as it was when we took it out.
Or like the case of Whitley Strieber, who, when trying to remove the earplug from his ear, it moved, preventing its extraction, and then returned to its original place.
Down into the lower part of my ear, the objects are surrounded by a gray, electrically conductive membrane that appears to shield the object from attack by the immune system. He did get a little piece of it, and when it was examined pathologically, it had a base metal.
Another surprising feature is its power source. How was it possible for him to remain on the air for 40 years? What is your source, and what does this tell us?
The energy from direct plug into the body's neural energy. That's not so fantastic because I was just reading a scientific article on bioelectronics.
These devices are powered by zero-point energy. In other words, they extract the tremendous energy of the quantum vacuum to power their activities.
So, what kind of technology are we talking about? It is a technology already developed secretly and somewhere in the world.
And these objects contain carbon nanostructures, carbon nanotubes placed together, make a carbon nanofiber, joined together, make a carbon nanoribbon. So when you look for these carbon nanostructures in these later ones that we looked at, we find that there's a very complex electronic structure, much like we would see, only man-made, but far more complex than what they use for computers' chips.
Well, we found that many of the implants contain carbon nanotubes. I found that a very significant binding because carbon nanotubes are now on the cutting edge of nanotechnology on Earth.
We know that maybe 5 to 7 years ago, nobody knew what nanotechnology was. They were talking about scientific circles. We're talking about the possibility of a carbon nanotube.
An amazing technology indeed. But terrestrial or of what origin? Advanced nanotechnology not yet developed by anyone in the world. It is possible to think of nanotechnology applied 40 years ago when it was implemented. Ron O.
Technology circles at this point, it's science fiction as far as actually doing it. So it's not a stretch at all to say it's at least a century ahead of anything that we could have.
And that these represent a science which goes beyond our academic science. and I might say beyond what we know about our black budget science.
Could these devices be done made on Earth?
I don't think so. I think the technology involved is at least 100 years ahead of.
I think that we're looking at something that's non-terrestrial.
This case and this investigation will go down in history.
Two-legged friend.
This is the first time that a case like this has been brought directly to your living room with television cameras. A case we did together with the Telemundo case closed team. This is the first time in history that this has happened. I hope you liked it. Here we make a brief general conclusion to this extraordinary story. After all the scientific research into the case of Ron Ohl, knowing him, being present at every test performed on his left wrist, at his hypnosis session, at his surgery to remove the implant he had for more than 40 years, after observing him under a high-powered microscope, after listening to the highest-ranking specialists, what are the conclusions? What or who has developed and applied nanotechnology for more than 40 years? What are the goals behind these amazing implants?
It's absolutely in my mind. Don't ask anything about this.
It's likely that these devices have many functions, including tracking, monitoring the health of the subject.
It's some intelligence Zweitausendnein. Somewhere else is learning or they're studying something about the human body and they're gaining that knowledge. And I've come to think that perhaps it is a result of some experiment that's going on that they are doing with human beings.
They would be able to know a great deal about our society based on what these people are broadcasting to them.
Only monitoring and knowledge of our society. For Dr. Roger Leir, the leader in these matters, one scientific hypothesis that cannot be ruled out is evolution.
Grandchildren, they're not the same, Aussend.
A hypothesis. But what about the scientific community in general? Are you interested in investigating this extraordinary technology and finding the answers together? Have you shown this to the scientific expertise? I mean, have you publicized this? What has been the answer to this?
That's a very good question, Jamie. And for a long time, we've been trying to get an article printed in the Science.
What would happen if the scientific community became more interested in this strange and at the same time extraordinary technology in nanotechnological advances applied for decades?
Aussend, as to how it's done, my gosh, you could make this material. You could wrap a heart, a kidney, a screw, or a pin in it, and the body would not reject anything, and you wouldn't have to give a person very expensive immunological drugs for the rest of their life.
That in the field of medicine, but also in communications.
And drive costs down and stimulate the economy. If we could use zero-point energy and not have to burn fuel of any kind, that we could eliminate pollution, nuclear waste, and have clean, unlimited energy, truly unlimited energy for humanity.
Hypothesis, scientific theories. We are at the breaking point of a new reality.
I don't know that we're close to any kind of a breakthrough, but one thing is quite true, that the experience is changing. and it's becoming much more focused on the lives of the people who are turned toward it. You can get very deeply into this now, much more than you could 25 years ago.
I'm very convinced that Dr. Lear and I are doing the right thing, and I think that it's very important to get this technology out in such a way as to help humanity later.
We've reached the point of we're so used to them that they don't seem at all, everyone kind of accepts their existence. Then they'll sort of be in our lives and the secrecy will drop away and the denial will drop away.
I think that alien contact will probably become somewhat more frequent and more accepted, more mainstream gradually over time.
Two-legged friend.
Visitors can come into your life if they want it.
The Ron Oil case is undoubtedly one of the most important in history. We will continue investigating. There is still a long way to go to discover what is inside the implant with highly specialized equipment. Another witness is missing who has another use and implant in his body. So in a few weeks we will surely return.